Once a captain, always a captain.
Actually, you'd be surprised that's not true, especially
Really?
in the early 1900s and then through the Depression, that you found that people did change jobs a lot.
When they lost everything, sure.
And so you would have them a baker one year and then working in the Wallace shipyards another year and then working in, say, the Sweeney Cooperage factory or the Royal Box manufacturing company. They would flip. I sort of expected that they would stay. There are certain professions like longshoremen, they seem to stay in that profession for a long time, but others switched.
Oh, that's interesting. Bullseye Blair, he lived at 1550 Harwood.
Now that's an amazing story because the house, when you walk by it on Harwood Street, it's not all that special looking. You just sort of walk by it. It's surrounded by high-rise apartments. But that house in the late 1920s was probably Vancouver's most famous address. Lieutenant Colonel Blair, Robert Blair was born in Chicoutimi, Quebec. He was a small arms expert in the British Empire during First World War. He became the commander of the Seaforth Highlanders here in Vancouver. And in 1929, I believe, he went over to England and competed in this sharpshooting competition, and he took for the first time both the King's Cup and another prize called the Grand Aggregate. It had never happened before in the history of the British Empire. He became a huge hero here in Canada. On his way back across the country, every stop the train made, it was like there was civic receptions for him. When he finally got back here in Vancouver, there was a big parade in the Cambie parade grounds, the old bus depot place there. And then they paraded him down to Stanley Park. There are about 30 or 40 pictures of him in the archives. Really? And lots of articles in the newspapers and Maclean's magazine.
What we don't know about our history.
Exactly. People walk down to the beach. Well, I'm getting to know. I'm learning.
Well, you remember too. That helps. With a little prompting from me.
Thank you.
Pine Crescent. Now, are we talking Pine Crescent?
In Shaughnessy.
In Shaughnessy?
Yes.
That was William Carey Dittmar's house?
Yes.
Georgian Revival, was it?
Georgian Revival, exactly. You're better at the architecture than I am. William Carey Dittmar's was part of a firm called Armstrong Morrison, and they built a lot of Vancouver's earlier bridges, the Fraser Street Bridge, the old Granville Bridge, the Connaught Bridge, which became the Cambie Street Bridge.
Right.
And he's famous because he actually brought the first automobile to Vancouver.
The horseless carriage.
The first horseless carriage. So he's famous for that. He's also was voted Citizen of the Year. He was this huge pillar of Vancouver society.
So rich, powerful, a mover, a shaker.
Mover and shaker. Across the street, you had Cunningham from Cunningham's Drugs and all sorts of people, even royalty in that little enclave in Shaughnessy there.
So perhaps if you are a Dittmar, your inheritance was fine.
Well, you probably...
Who knows?
We hope. But Hadani Dittmar, the famous journalist...
I know Hadani Dittmar, yes. Foreign correspondent. Is she related?
She's the granddaughter.
Isn't that interesting?
And I think there's some foundation where the Dittmar family contributed some money to some foundation, and it's awarded every year, and she's the one that actually
Well, in my
hands it
next
out.
life, I'm coming back as a trust fund baby. You know, where the money pours out of the sky. We
is
like
there space
that.
enough for me?
My granddad, oh no. He spent it all. Dunlevy, 844 Dunlevy, 1968. This is the guy who built the first City Hall?
Yes.
Or Sentel built the first City Hall.
Yes. Frederick William Sentel built this house in 1899. It's at the corner of Dunlevy and Pryor. And for years, as I was going home over the Georgia Viaduct, I would see this house on the corner of the street, and I thought it was unoccupied, but it looked like a ghost house. It had really been let go for, you know, a variety of reasons. Houses aren't always easy to care for if there's financial concerns and stuff like that. But it was bought by a realtor who flipped it, and anyway, the current owners are fantastic people, and they have brought that house back from the brink of demolition, beautifully restored it with salvaged material from the original house, but also from elsewhere. It's just absolutely beautiful. But it is interesting in that it is the lone example of a Fred William Sentel house still left in Vancouver, who did build our first city hall. He was an alderman. His brothers built a large number of homes in Vancouver.
So he was a contractor.
He was a contractor, and the first thing you notice when you walk into that house is this amazing newel post, and it's made of cedar and maple that was apparently cut down from his property on Grove Crescent, which was at the south foot of Princess. It's no longer around now. The land was expropriated for the railroad, but it looks like it should be in some church or some sort of old college in England. It's just absolutely beautiful.
Beautiful. 909 Richards was, I think it's gone, isn't it? The oldest house?
It's gone. It's sort of
in
sad.
downtown South?
Yeah, it was, and this was interesting. I was hired by the developer who was forced by City Hall to get the history researched for this house that was going to be demolished. The building permit or the demolition permit was already given. But as I did the research, I was amazed to find that this was the house of Andrew Edward Lees. He was a parks commissioner for Vancouver. He was responsible for the starting of Vancouver's Stanley Park Zoo. He had a famous clothing store at the corner of Cambie and Hastings in the Flack Block, where Mr. Big and Tall was for years.
Sure.
And then after him, the DeGraves family lived there. Robert DeGraves was Vancouver fire chief. His brother Norman was a tax collector for the port. And then Harry DeGraves was a Vancouver alderman. There was all this history in this old building, and it was torn down.
It would be fascinating to know where all current mayors, past mayors lived, premiers, where people grew up.
Exactly.
We don't have plaques on our houses anymore. Washington slept here, or John A. Macdonald was born here.
Well, the Vancouver Heritage Foundation has its Heritage Plaque program, so there are a number of heritage buildings, designated buildings, who do have little snippets of history tacked on the front.
Right. Do you know how you get, how old does a building have to be designated heritage, or is it about the age, or is it about the famous person who lived there, or do you know?
I think it's a combination of all of those factors. I think originally, they were only looking at houses built prior to a certain era, and then a lot of historical houses, like the Robert Blair House, were left out of the Heritage Register. But now I think there's a recognition that it's not just how old it was, it is who lived there. There's this sense of the contribution of the spirits of those people.
Or who built it.
Or who
like
built
Arthur Erickson's home is saved. Arthur's still alive, of course.
Yes.
But Joy Kagawa, they're trying to save that, I think.
The Joy Kagawa house on West 64th in Marpole, they're trying to save that. So yes, there is an effort to preserve those historical houses, but huge pressure, of course, to knock them down and build something big and ugly.
Big and ugly. But I think it's so important that we remember, and if you can restore something that's beautiful.
I do too. Well, and that's why I love the house on the corner of Dunlevy and Pryor, is that they really, they didn't renovate, they restored. And there's such love being put into that house. And these people are getting all this love back from the community. People are dropping by and saying, I have this old antique lamp, or what about this piece of furniture? It's amazing to see that love that they've put into the house come back to them.
Yes. When I first moved to Vancouver, I remember, I think it's Umberto's now, it's El Giardino, but it was Adrian Cameron's modeling school. Wasn't it the purple house on the corner? Or am I wrong?
I don't remember.
I'm older than you are.
Not by much.
Okay. It's one you can investigate, maybe.
I actually did research the Umberto's house, and so that is actually probably about the third or fourth or fifth oldest standing house in Vancouver. I believe it's 1889 or 1888, 1889. The Washington Leslie House, it's called, the Leslie House. And then there was an old coach house in the back, which has since been moved to the Mole Hill development in the West End.
Right, we're on Hornby and...
It's between Thurlow and Butte, I think, and Comox and Pendrell.
Okay.
So that row house, or excuse me, the Lane House that Leslie built for his daughter and son-in-law was moved because I think Umberto wants to build a little sort of mini hotel behind the restaurant.
That was, I remember that was in the works, perhaps.
Yeah.
In the meantime, we'll just eat great pasta.
Yes, absolutely.
And celebrate heritage.
And celebrate heritage.
How much does one of these cost, by the way, just approximately? Like if somebody wants you to research the history of their home.
There's a price range depending on how many houses are included in the.
Right.
Here's the Jimi Hendrix house. Depending on how many houses are included, how old the houses are, it can range from anywhere from say $700 to $2,000, $3,000, $4,000.
Depending how long it takes you. It's by the hour, I assume, or how easy it is to find out information.
Well, sometimes.
Oh, look. Can we get a camera in? That's her.
That's her.
That's Jimi Hendrix's grandmother.
Nora, yeah.
Nora. How fabulous. So there's articles in here. Who does the work on the front for you?
I do.
You do? You're a bit of an artiste?
I try.
Well, great. How nice to meet you.
Thank you very much, Fanny.
Thank you. James Johnson. We'll go in.